From Chapter 7, I decided to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. For questions 1, stereotypes are defined in the textbook as attributes that cover up individual differences and ascribe certain characteristics to an entire group of people. This is on page 209. Categorization is described as a highlight for what two or more things have in common in contrast to other things that do not have it in common. This is on page 209. They work within existence to each other because the categories help make up stereotypes. On page 210, the textbook explains the minute we categorize people and attribute any behavior, belief, or feeling to that category, we have stereotyped them. We have put them together in a way that focuses on a similarity and provides an explanation for behavior. In my own personal experience, I have been stereotyped because I was born a blonde and I'm kind of an airhead. So at times my family has thrown the "it's because you're a natural blonde" card as an explanation on why I am a ditz. Ethnocentrism is painted as being an elite group to that group, and all the other groups being rated from how they compare to it. In the textbook, it describes a stereotyping being grounded in an effort to understand others, whereas ethnocentrism is grounded in a competition to often unconscious desire for victory. This is on page 210. I've seen ethnocentrism when I traveled to Mexico and spoke with a taxi driver from Mexico about the expectations Americans have when traveling to Mexico and expecting people to speak English. Although when they don't speak English, they get upset. Those Americans are using ethnocentrism whether they know it or not because they are inferring they think English is the superior language by thinking somebody needs to speak English when they go to their country. That statement also seems very much like a stereotype to me because I know it's not every American. Prejudice is similar to ethnocentrism because, for example, blatant prejudice and ethnocentrism both refer to themselves as the superior group. Blatant prejudice is referred to as type of prejudice that is based on the belief that the outgroup is some way inferior to the in-group. This is on page 222. Ethnocentrism is described in the text as always competitive, always centered around feelings of, being superior. This is on page 222. So both blatant prejudice and ethnocentrism are similar in that way. They are also different because on page 215, ethnocentrism is referred to being grounded in an unconscious victory, whereas 222, blatant prejudice is referred to being very violent and conscious. Some manifestations of blatant prejudice are quite violent, such as physical beating and terrorizing of members of the hated group. I've seen blatant prejudice firsthand because I have a friend of color who was called some horrible things by a stranger. I am also Italian and my mom is much more darker than I am, and people have said awful things to her as well. Both examples tie in with violence from blatant prejudice, but verbal. From Chapter 8, I decided to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. Conflict is described in the text using 5 approaches: avoiding, accommodating, competing, compromising, and collaborating, each being used to show how we work through conflict, both individually and culturally. The role of culture determines how we do conflict because it is expressed through our norms and values. The text also says the frequency with which some of these choices are made, or the way these choices are typically viewed, also reflect different cultural orientations to conflict. This is on page 247. Intergroup conflict is conflict that happens among others who are culturally similar to ourselves. This is on page 260. The origins of intergroup conflict started within histories. This is because, as said on page 269, when we read about history, there is often unspoken assumptions that this is the way it was, and other possible interpretations are eliminated from our view of legitimacy. Alternative histories, ones not acknowledged by the dominant or ruling groups, are hidden but kept alive within their own group through stories and traditions. Uncovering and being sensitive to these hidden histories is also an important part of understanding and dealing with intergroup conflict. Intergroup conflicts are always between groups that have competitive relevance with each other. The competition is over some kind of pie, such as money, land, social privileges, people's beliefs, and each group feeling more deserving of more pie. The example of conflict noted earlier were things like country against country, ethnicity against ethnicity, age group against another age group, the religion against religion. Baptists as a group very likely would not be in conflict with the French group. The only time that this may occur is if two different types of groups happen to be in conflict over the same pie. These are examples in the text that show group memberships and how conflict can arise. According to the text, appropriate strategies for managing intercultural and intergroup conflicts are joint goals and supportive social climates. Joint goals is referred to as, rather than an inner group that feeds on competition, they come together to meet an equally desired outcome. This is on page 273. Supportive social climates offer institutional support and refers to sentiments that of larger community and governing bodies for interactions between the groups, ultimately helping the intergroup's cause. This is also found on page 273. I have seen joint goals when I work alongside Thrive by Five to help a child, even though I believe I can help that child better in ECAP than the other organization, but we both have a common goal in helping that child, so we work together.